Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke, and I'm your host. I'm so glad you're here today. You know, over my very long career, I've done a lot of things that I thought were very rewarding in many different areas of our industry. Everything from being in management, running, opening, closing stores, traveling around the country, educating, being part of formulating new products, and of course, my decades and decades and decades and decades of radio shows where I was able to work with amazing people in our industry, but at the same time, also able to launch thousands of products in almost every single category. Recently, I had the chance to do something that I think is quite amazing. And what I was able to do is be part of I call it a regenerative adventure down on Rick Scalzo's Kokora farm in Costa Rica. Now, before I talk about that, I want to talk about organic. Organic vegetables and fruits really started taking hold. Actually, there were some things happening in the 40s and the 70s, but in the 90s, it really kind of took hold. And all of a sudden, we started having, in 1990, Congress passed the Organic Food Protection Act, and then the USDA published a lot of proposed studies. And then it has always been kind of something that's always been very visible within our industry. And I was very happy about it because of the fact that at this point in time, I was now able to get fruits and vegetables that had no chemicals, no GMOs, no herbicides. And to me, that just made a lot of sense. Not only did they at one time taste a lot better, but it also, in the back of our minds, we were able to say, well, I'm eating these, but there's no chemicals being used. So we were kind of making a statement at the same time. So if we kind of segue ourselves, 35 or 40 years later, where we are today, organic is still something that a lot of us are searching out and we're trying to incorporate into our everyday diets. It's still expensive. Not everybody can afford organic. But the difference now is that the taste of the organic fruits and vegetables has changed dramatically. And why do we think that is? Well, there's still no chemicals. We're still not using herbicides and GMOs and the harmful chemicals on any of these kind of, growth patterns that we're using in organic. So what's different? The soil. Along this entire organic journey, we have spent little to no time focusing on the soil or actually doing anything that actually is rebuilding the farm soils that we're utilizing. So we're at the point where you can actually see a field that might look good, but there's little to no nutritional value. And I think we need to really kind of take a look at what are we doing and what are we not doing. So over the last couple of years, you've started to hear a lot about regenerative. And I tell people all the time, when you're dealing with organic, those standards are also part of regenerative agriculture. You're still not using herbicides and GMOs, but you are also doing things that protect the soil. And I think it's really important for us to know that this is not just a good idea. This is essential for where we are at this point in time to ourselves moving forward. We have got to be able to cultivate and do crops throughout the years, every single year. And the battle that we're fighting right now is against ourselves, because we are not putting ourselves into a category where we have healthy soil that can sustain us. We are going to be growing food that doesn't really have a nutritional value anymore. And we're also growing crops that, are not putting anything back into the soil. So I thought what we could do today is talk a little bit about regenerative agriculture. So as I arrived in Costa Rica, I was able to go out to the CR Medicinal Farm where Rick Scalzo grows all of his herbs for his line Kokora. When you see the Kokora Regenerative Farm and all of its beauty, from the field of green to the lush and dense plants that are growing with such purpose, know in your heart, and I did, that this does not just happen. It's orchestrated. using bioferments and masterfully building the microbiome of the soil, planting plants with purpose and strategy, utilizing nitrogen, balancing cover crops to sequester carbon down into the soil, utilizing an intercropping process to add different plants to grow together in harmony and perpetually tend to the fields in a way that makes a difference. And of course, the greenhouses and where the plants are started so they can thrive well out in the fields. It is a very long, detailed, and intricate process from the field preparation at the start of the planting season, in between the crops, and after the crop is harvested, and then the preparation after the crop to prepare for the next crop. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. So I thought I would talk about a couple categories that are kind of focused on with regenerative agriculture. Number one is fermentation. One of the very important components of the farm in Costa Rica is the preparation of our own bioferments, which we make right on the farm. We collect beautiful soil from the surrounding forest floor. We also add plant debris, dead and decaying plants, and wild growing mushrooms and fungus, and bring everything back to the farm to start the fermentation process. We take it to our bioferment lab where we chop it up finely. We add milk powder and rice semolina and molasses and coffee hulls and cinnamon. We mix it all together and then add it to 55-gallon sacks, put it in bags in the 200-gallon water containers and enable it to ferment properly. When the fermentation process is complete, we end up with a 200-gallon water tank of highly concentrated bioferment. And that liquid is sprayed on the crops, fed into the root system. And this is where it all starts, feeding the microbiome of the soil. The next category is something called biochar. Now, to me, this was very, very cool. Biochar and the bamboo vinegar are also very important to help the protection and to help grow with the plant resiliency. So it strengthens the capacity of the plant to interface with any pathogens in the environment and the soil, including weed predators. The biochar gets put into and sprayed onto the crop, and so does the bamboo vinegar as part of the regeneration process. Now, we have built our own biochar incinerators, and they're burning bamboo, making char and collecting the bamboo vinegar from the condensation from the burning process. This is another element of the biofermentation process. They are harvesting a lot of bamboo growing adjacent to the farm perimeter. Composting, another intricate part. On the Costa Rican farm, the composting operation is quite large. In the composting operation facility, they have it covered with a canopy to protect the compost from the rain. They have 8 long windrows in the facility, like 200 to 300 feet windrows. And in the compost itself, they add chicken manure for nitrogen and a number of elements for carbon, including glass clippings from the farm. They also are including poro chips and poro cuttings from the trees that they're planting there. They're very high in nitrogen. They add coffee hulls from the coffee processing operation. Any debris or waste material from the crops gets put into the compost. They are turned many times to mix all of the ingredients together, and then they essentially start the fermentation process. When they start the process, the turning of all the ingredients many times infuses oxygen into the pile, and then by adding water into the pile, infuses the hydrogen into it. They maintain this process over many weeks, often maintaining a certain temperature and testing it during the process. At the end of the day, when it's done, they are witnessing beautiful, dark aggregate soil with porous, fluffy particles of really rich living soil. This is what goes into the soil to help to feed the soil web. Cover crops. Now, cover crops are very important. On the Costa Rica farm, they have 3 specific nitrogen-fixing plants that they use as cover crops. They use mucuna, which is also used in the product line. They have crotalaria, also known as sun hemp, and they have canavalia. All of these are very aggressive nitrogen-fixing plants. After the crop is harvested, there may be a 3 to 4 month period where there will be nothing on the soil. And in the regenerative farming, that's not what they want. They want living green material on the soil all the time. So this is why they use cover crops in between crop cycles. At the end of that in between cycle, they will turn the cover crop, fix the nitrogen in the soil, and then they'll be ready for the next crop cycle. As you're seeing, there's a lot of stuff involved. Another category that they do and work with on the farm is called intercropping. This is another component of regenerative farming, and it is very effective. On the Costa Rican farm, some of the crops, specifically ginger and ashwagandha, they really enjoy having another crop growing with it in the same bed. When you think intercropping, think growing a companion crop with the crop that's being grown for medicinal use. An example, if we're growing ashwagandha, we're going to use a crop called crotalaria or sun hemp into the bed. It will grow up about 5 foot tall and then go to flower. But when it's about 3 foot tall, it produces small nodules on its shallow root structure. And when those nodules mature, they swell up and turn red, and then they burst and release nitrogen in a form that the plant can, actually recognize and assimilate. This is a beautiful thing because the intercrop that we're growing with the ashwagandha or the ginger is a companion with the crop that is being grown. It works in companionship by providing nitrogen in a form that the plant can recognize and protects it from weed invasion and protects the ashwagandha or the ginger from pathogens. Crop rotation. Another component of regenerative farming is called crop rotation. Many of us hear this as a practice of organic farming, which is true. On the fields in Costa Rica, they apply crop rotation to build after the crops are grown. They want to build diversity. That's an important feature of regenerative farming. Crop rotation allows them to do that. So next year, in the planting cycle, they rotate the crop and will not duplicate what was grown the previous season. This is the part of the plant, the big plan, where they allow diversity to build and grow, because the more diversity of the soil food web you can better cultivate into your soil, the healthier the soil will be and the robust the crop will be. Now, they also have something that is a big difference between organic and regenerative is a no-till practice. The reason they do not till is they want to protect the soil food web. Every time a field is plowed, you essentially take what's underneath the topsoil and you lift it to the surface and you expose all the beautiful soil food organisms to atmospheric conditions. And all of that stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere. Remember, regenerative farming is the practice of sequestering the carbon back down into the soil. Plowing allows the carbon to escape back into the atmosphere. This is very important environmental reason why they're doing a no-till farming practice. But also another part of this is they basically want to keep building up the beds, building up the topsoil, and building up the microbiome to feed the soil food web. And that is what gives them the most beautiful and healthy crops that they grow every season. Now, people ask all the time, do they have anything to do that actually turns the soil? They have a plow that's really not a plow. It's more of a dirt turner and making kind of a very thin trough called a yeoman's plow. The yeoman's plow has shanks, and the shanks can actually vibrate down into the soil. They can actually break up compacted areas of the soil. They can increase the soil depth, which improves water management, building a healthier soil, breaking up those deep soil compactions, improving nutrient uptake. And those wonderful ferments that they do make, they actually put them into the containers on the top of this yeoman's plow, and there's a tube that delivers that wonderful ferment down deep into the soil. It's quite amazing that there's many things that we can actually do to make a difference. And I think that it's very important for us to realize that, this farm is doing things that have never been done before. They will tell you that they're constantly experimenting, but what they're doing is making a huge dramatic difference in the quality and the integrity of the crops, as well as the quality and the integrity of the soil. The Regenerative Organic Certified Foundation has awarded the Kokora CR Medicinal Ranch in Costa Rica a gold standard rating. Now, this has never been done. There has never been any other gold farm awards down in Costa Rica, and I'm hard pressed to find another farm anywhere that has been awarded a gold standard. It's because they do it right, because they're working on the soil. They're making sure there's plenty of water, there's plenty of nutrients, a strong microbiome, plenty of worms in the soil, that they're not tilling, that they're using cover crops, that they're intercropping. They're putting many, many crops together. We experienced all of this down on the farm. And although I've been teaching regenerative agriculture and doing lectures around the country and all that kind of stuff, which I think is wonderful, I've never really seen it in person. So being able to actually see it and touch it and feel it and smell it and see the results of the hard work going into this regenerative farm, it really did make a difference. It has allowed me to look at things a little bit differently. It has allowed for me to have a passion about what regenerative is all about. And it has also allowed me to know that this is not just a good idea. It's something we need to get behind. There are right now places around the world that are starting to incorporate regenerative agriculture into their everyday economies. They know not only do they need to build better, stronger, healthier, more nutrient-dense crops, but when you're doing regenerative agriculture, your crops can be much bigger, much healthier, a bigger size crop. I mean, we need to feed a lot of people on this planet. If we could feed them better food, better quality food, more nutritive valued food, and at the same time protect and rebuild the soil, kind of sounds like a no-brainer to me. So I hope that you will do a little research on your own. If you ever get time, go onto your streaming program that you have at your house and watch the movie Kiss the Ground. I was very, very inspired and taken back by this. It was very eye-opening, and it really kind of made a difference in the way that I think about regenerative agriculture. So, I hope that you'll like it as well. One of those evenings and you're flipping and there's nothing on TV, request it. It's not a long movie. It's well worth your time. And I think we all owe it to ourselves to educate ourselves on the whole area of regenerative. When organic really started kicking in, it took about a decade for people to embrace organic. Regenerative is kicking in a lot faster. I don't know if it's because we are more prepared, or maybe because people are understanding the importance of the microbiome in the soil and the sequestering of carbon into the soil itself, or because they're tired of biting into organic fruits and vegetables that have little to no flavor. Have you bit into an organic tomato lately? Oh my God. It's like air. There's no nutritional value. And if there is, it's very little, and there's definitely very little flavor. If you have to add flavor into the food, we're doing something wrong. And I think that regenerative agriculture is going to make a difference because we still follow the whole idea of organic foundational procedures. But we take it up the next step, and that's the no-tilling, that's the intercropping, that's the composting, the crop rotation, the bioferments, the biochar, and making sure that you have people that are there that understand the soil literally from the ground up and are trying new procedures. And, to be able to be on this farm and have my hands in the soil, harvesting turmeric, there was so much, it was just growing like crazy, and planting holy basil and seeing the biochar burning this bamboo into this absolutely beautiful dark black char that is going to be put into the mulch and put into the soil, and see the actual picture and in life, in true form, intercropping, different crops growing together, and seeing the way everything is watered, and see the strict attention to detail in every single part of this farm. It really does make a difference. And I think that if we all understood it a little bit better, maybe we will embrace it a little bit quicker and realize that we're not just doing it for our own consumption of high quality food and nutritional supplements. We're also doing it because it's really important to be able to be doing something for the planet and for the soil. We need our soil to work with us, not just for today, but for a decade from now, from a century from now. What can we do that will keep this soil from becoming depleted? Around the planet, there are so many areas that are dead. They're barren, they're naked, they're empty. They've been used and abused and completely ignored. And from what I've learned is that you can bring these areas back. And we can all do things like supporting, the Kiss the Ground Foundation, the regenerative movement, of course, the organic movements as well, doing what we can do, tuning in, listening to podcasts that are dealing with this topic and getting the understanding that we need to be able to make the choices that we need to be making. So I hope that, that this might have just given you a little bit of information. I was very blessed to be able to, spend time on this beautiful farm and actually be a part of that farm, and get my hands in that beautiful soil. And this was the dry season. But it's really funny. You would see that after they would water those areas, it's like the soil just stood up and saluted you. It was absolutely beautiful and rich. And they do it right. And I think this is a movement and a foundation that we all need to get behind, because it is something that's, very, very important. I thank you for taking the time for this today. Thank you for tuning in. Check out all my other podcasts. I'm on all the platforms available. I would love for you to go to Honest Health with Jeffrey Burke on YouTube. Watch all the videos that are there. Have your friends go watch them. I want to get as much visibility of these amazing guests that I bring to you. And make sure to push that one button, subscribe. And that way we get better visibility. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your passion. And I thank you for tuning in. God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.